Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
So I'm currently working on a project. Why'd you laugh at that? Was that funny?
What could that project be?
You don't know what that is.
Oh,
do you?
I'm your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle diorama.
No, that's not what I'm working on. I mean, that's not what I'm going to talk about. Yes, I'm working on that. And it's going really great, by the way.
Yeah, and people are watching the updates on Instagram. They're loving it.
The thing is, I should post more on my Instagram. I'm bad at social media. I'm trying to get better at just sharing because nothing in my world seems interesting to me. But apparently, like you showing my diorama and everyone's like, oh my God, what's this diorama? How are you doing this? And I'm like... Really? People wanted to watch that?
I think people love watching transformation. So whether you're transforming a house or you're transforming your body, when they can see progress every day, there's like something inside of us that feels like success, progress is happening, transformation is happening.
Yeah. Well, I'm working on a project actually. Now this doesn't even matter, but I am recording the audio book of The Tree of Life.
Woo!
The reason this matters. Well, there's reasons.
It's freaking awesome.
Well, that's not even the point.
It's the best book ever.
I'm so excited as a side note.
I'm so excited
to be creating that in this season. It should be done, completed, and ready to go in the next 5 months. Like everything solid, maximum it should be.
Yeah.
But it's like a risk journey. I'm like friggin' risk taking. Maybe we'll do a podcast on the journey of that as I'm like getting into reading the book and working with a voice coach and just going on that journey. But I sat down with the guy who's actually doing the recording in his recording studio for me the other night. And
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. That song is
I had him
half shell.
I had him listen. Shut up.
It's just going through my head now.
I had him listen to one of our episodes for something going on in his world. I was like, you need to listen to this. And we because he's an audio guy.
Yeah.
And we started laughing. We got into the conversation of recording and making sure that you're like managing yourself with the microphone.
Me with the mic, isn't it?
and I was like, I'm not Abby. She's the one you got to manage. And he goes, oh, I noticed it all over the place. She's like, your level's great, but she's a head talker because he could hear it as you're like whoosh, whoosh, whoosh back and forth with your head. I'm like, I know I'm always on top of her.
Whoosh, whoosh. I know. Before this, you're like, adjust your mic where you want it. And then I started singing you the song. It was like, you know that if I get it where I want it, I still readjust it 5 times during the podcast.
It's still going to make noise. So anyways, that's a side note.
Oh, you must have felt so validated by him being like, she's the worst.
I did. I lost it laughing. And I know that every sound guy, I've had multiple sound guys who'll listen to us because I refuse to make pristine audio, like sit down and cut all the little things out. Because I'm like, it's a conversation between two people having life. I'm just wanting friends to come hang out. Yeah. I don't need it to feel like some huge pro thing. But I know audio guys, they'll be like, you know, you could add a little bit of compression on that. I don't even know what that is. Do you want to take over editing my stuff for me?
One day, hey, if you're a sound guy and you're listening and you want to edit every
you're
episode.
Just like, I love their content, but I'm annoyed by this. Then
feel free to
you come in
email
and tell
us.
us what to do. It's just being edited
come in and
garage.
just do it every week.
Come in and do it.
Every week.
Yes, I would
then
love that.
Then it'll be better.
That would help me.
That would help us all.
Anyways, today.
I'm so excited about what we're talking about today. And here is why. Because we're talking about something that you are freaking awesome at.
Oh.
That you have been a boss at our
Sex
whole marriage.
Again? My goodness.
No. Although we got some episodes we got to do on that coming up. But
Ooh.
But what I want to talk to you about today is how great you are at the dynamic that happens when two people get married.
You're gonna have to elaborate more than that because now it just sounds like more sex. I'm gonna jump in here. The people we love to hate. That's who we're going to talk about today is our in-laws.
Yeah, but
the
if you're single,
we love to hate.
You're going to want to listen. Because
you want to get ready because this is going to prepare you for actually the dynamics of
how your relationship changes when you get married to your parents.
Yeah.
And the journey of that.
And how you relate to your spouse's parents and expectations you can have in that space, and who do we become? How do we change? How do we morph from the culture that we grew up in to this new culture that we're creating? And so it really helps to cast some vision, and it might also show you some red flags because you might be like, oh, I want to marry this person, but holy crap, the way that they manage their relationship with their family is going to be entrapment for me.
Absolutely. So let's start with, we're just going to talk about, there's a lot of different angles about in-laws and how to have healthy relationships, but really the main angle we want to get is to how you and your significant other create a culture that is good for connection, being surrounded by the families of each side.
Yeah. So let's back up and talk.
And this could be whether you're married or dating, because you could date for a while and families still affect it. Yeah.
So let's talk about, I want to start with the overarching problem with regards to extended families and in-laws.
Okay.
Common problems that come up with regards to in-laws.
Culture clash.
Culture clash, she said.
Do you think all the people loved that audio level where I just yelled into the mic?
Yeah. One of the common problems within getting into relationship with families is that a lot of people, when they come from a family, their family is the best thing on the face of the planet.
Yeah. Or the worst thing in the face of the planet, but it's normal to you.
Right. But this is my family. This is how I do life. I have a set of rules on how I approach that family. Mm-hmm. A lot of families, for the most part, they really do love, or a lot of people love their family.
Yeah.
For the most part. But in the way that it goes, well, this is my family. And their family ends up taking precedence. Even if it's a dysfunctional family, will take precedence over all other relationships and circumstances, especially when it comes to this concept of a marriage.
Yeah. Every human really desires to belong and to feel safe. And even if you have a crazy family, there can be this innate thing, but they've been with me forever and I know they'll be with me forever.
Yeah.
So there's this tie that we have. And so one of the things that is so important in relationships is that you actually learn, like, leave and cleave. It's like a very biblical way to say it. You actually learn how to leave your parents and your family as your number one,
that institution,
safest
that system,
place, the most loyalty. Because lots of people I know get married and still their family is who they're the most loyal to.
I had one friend who he married a woman and her and her sister were the best of friends. Yeah. Just two peas in a pod, couldn't pull them apart.
Awesome.
And she stayed married to her sister.
Yep.
Long into the marriage. And he was like, I can't go anywhere without her sister having to come along. I can't do anything without her sister having input. And then her deferring to her sister and finding out what her sister thinks about it, because it's so like codependent in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to talk a little bit about our story. And so one of them I'll say is, so when me and my best friend, we grew up kind of like sisters. I've known her since I was 7, and we both were a part of each other's families in a deep way. But when she got married, I was her number one.
Yeah, you were.
I was her number one person. And when she got married, that did not change.
No.
I was still her number one.
Johnny had to have wanted to murder you.
Well, it was like he was halfway wanted to murder me and halfway was so thankful for me.
Right, because when she was having meltdowns, he didn't have to deal with it.
She went into after they got married, she had just gone through a super traumatic event. And after they got married, she started having panic attacks. And so he was like, ah! But like she would want me, not him.
Right.
You know, like I would be at their house and she'd like send him out of the room and be like, come here. And there's something beautiful. Obviously the people, she had more history with me than him.
Yeah.
They'd only been together for a year. Of course I feel safer.
Yep.
That makes logical sense. But what happened was when I married you, I leaved and cleaved.
Yes.
Like I kicked her out of my spouse role.
I'm not sure if she knew what to do with that.
No, it was actually painful for both of us, because when relationships change, it's painful and you don't know what it's going to look like, and it's new and there's grief involved but So it was a little bit, there was like a tearing apart. Ultimately, she and me both say it's the best thing that happened to our marriages. Johnny says so too. He's like, yeah, because my wife finally married me.
Yeah.
Like she had to work through stuff with me. She had to have more intimacy. She had to let me in on a deeper level. She had to be vulnerable with me.
So good.
And that's something that you need for a thriving relationship. So that was in our life. But I would say in your life, you and your mom were close.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we got married, I thought you did an amazing job of leaving and cleaving, but I also thought your mom did. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Would you like me to share?
Yeah, sure.
Kind of that story. Well, going back, we, as so many of you have listened to our stories, you know a little bit of the history of my mom and my dad and I and our family. So you understand kind of the pain process that was in our childhood and the reconciliation that went on later on in life. But when it came to a lot of the pain in her mom's relationship with dad, one of the foundational problems that was very real, it wasn't that she made it up, was that he deferred to his family system.
Yep.
So if his mom or dad wanted anything out of him, he dropped everything he was doing with us. He would drop hangout time with me. If he had made a promise to my mom, he'd be like, I'm sorry, but my dad wants me to do this. My mom wants this. They need this from me. And he would leave. If there was a problem with the way that they were acting or responding or treating her or our family, he immediately was quick to defend them to my mom and be like, well, that's, whatever, and make some excuses or bury his head in the sand.
Totally.
And so there was a pretty... for better or for worse, there was pretty strong conversations to me of like, when you get married, your job is to protect your wife and stand up for her and not allow other people to run the show and not bow and bend to them. And sometimes that created a little bit of frustration towards my father that was maybe unnecessary for me, but it did write a code inside of me that was very helpful. So the yin and yang of it. But what it ended up developing in is, as we started morphing into our marriage relationship, I definitely had a heart posture that I will set fire to my relationship with my parents and burn my entire family to the ground relationally if I have to, for the sake of my marriage. Oh. And the reason, obviously my mom said that, she gave me a lot of foundation for it, but also I was like, I believe a lot of people are scared to do this because they're like, yeah, but someone could divorce me. Right. Yeah. And I think that a lot of divorces happen because there aren't healthy boundaries and people don't stand up and take charge and they live in the fear of loss. So then they don't actually create. So for me, I'm like, well, I would rather lose my family and learn how to do this well at the potential cost in the future that Abby leaves me, but I still stood up and did it well. But I gave it my all. And I lived healthy. I made good decisions. Yeah. So when it came to moments with my parents, number one, there were moments where my mom did stuff that needed confrontation. Yeah. And I was so quick to go, this is not okay how you're handling this with my wife, X, Y, and Z. And I was okay with her having a complete meltdown. Yeah. To which at times she did. But absolutely, on the back end, something that was really beautiful, because my mom, and I remember at one point at a crossroads, I said, Mom, I am doing exactly what you trained me to do. Totally. I am having these conversations that you're not enjoying right now because you told me that this is a standard I need to have. Yeah. But again, coinciding with that, there were many a times where my mom, in our first year of marriage, purposely never called me. Right. Yeah. And didn't, like, not in a neglectful abandonment way, but she'd be like, oh, hey, how you guys doing? Oh, great. Good to hear. Yeah. Well, you guys have fun. And like literally chose to fully step out of the picture and go, I'm available if they need, but I'm not going to get overly involved and invested. And she went off and began to grieve, like, on her own, which is really emotionally intelligent at the time, that my relationship with my son has changed and he needs to make his wife number one, which is pretty powerful for her. Oh, this is one of the things I wanted to talk about because she did it so well. I remember she had conversations with me when we first got married about all of this. She was like, my relationship with Justin is going to have to change. I've been the only woman in his, like, I've been the main, not the only woman. Right. I've been the main woman. Her. Yeah, no, I've been the main, like, I mean,
she was a significant, you guys were best friends.
Yeah.
And she was a significant part of your life. And she's like, we've been significant, but I want you to know that your relationship with him comes first. And I want to honor that. And I am going to step back and I'm going to grieve. And she would talk to me about like, yeah, I'm grieving a lot, but it was never guilting me. It wasn't like, I'm grieving a lot because you stole my son away.
I never get to see him anymore, but I'm doing this for you.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like that at all. It was literally, this is a fact. My relationship with my son is changing. This is a good fact. This is a healthy fact. This is what is supposed to happen. And so because of that, I'm going to feel like I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't affect me or doesn't hurt me, but I'm not going to unhealthily, which this is so beautiful and redemptive because your mom as a kid, she tried to get her needs met through you unhealthily.
Right.
But then as an adult, as she'd been on this process of healing and restoration, she was really able to set us up for success. And that's a beautiful thing because she never got that from her in-laws.
Yes.
She got
made it
to
a
give
point
to us what she was never given.
That. Mm-hmm.
She was like, I will never. And like, you know, when you go through pain in life, you have two choices. You can get bitter and replicate what they did.
Totally.
Or you can like allow it to fuel you to make better choices.
Right. And not just be a pendulum swinger where you're like, just because there's extremes that can be created out of that, but actually going, no, how can I actually be responsive and create a different culture that's really healthy?
Yeah. Now I wanted to talk about it because this is something that's so important is I knew that I was your number one priority.
Yeah.
I knew that if we got
not in question.
If me and your parents got in a fight, I knew you'd take my side. Even if like you'd take my side and then bring me home and confront me.
Yes.
You know, like I knew I am your priority. And you're not going to do crazy things. Like if I'm doing something crazy, you're not going to support that.
Right. And let me just interject on that.
Yeah.
You talked about the idea of taking you home and confronting you. Because I think that it's easy. There are a lot of marriages where there may, I'll speak from experience with the men that I've spent time with.
Yeah.
A lot of men who have become emasculated and they don't stand up against their wife. They don't stand up against their parents. They want harmony. Unfortunately, when they do decide to stand up against their parents on behalf of their wife is still ruling the roost. The only reason they're now standing up is their wife. It's miserable enough at home for them with their wife that they're like, all right, I'm going to go talk to them.
Right.
And she's just going to get away with murder in the way that she's acting. And I'm going to hold my parents accountable. That's not what we're talking about. For me, it was, I'm going to create honor and respect for you as my wife with regards to them. And then, like you said, I was completely okay with going, what's happening here? There's something that's off track here. And this is a little out of control.
And we're going to actually get into because people get triggered by the other person's families.
Totally.
And you didn't defend me like, I'm never going to let you deal with your own triggers and have to take ownership.
Right.
What we're talking about is that I knew that I was your number one.
Yep.
Your number one priority. And if you want a healthy relationship, marriage, I'm talking about marriage because I don't know that it's healthy in dating to make someone your number one priority.
No, I don't think so at all. In fact, in dating process, if you're, cutting your family out of the process and making this other person your number one, they haven't even committed to you.
No.
But when you cross that threshold of, I am choosing you as a lifelong covenant. Yep. I want to fight for you. Then that's where you have to pony up and begin to go, I'm going to make a different investment here.
Yeah. So once you're married, to me is when the transition happens where you leave your family, you cleave to the person. So now my job is to make sure that our relationship is healthy. And it's more important that my relationship with you is good than it is that my relationship with my mom and dad is good.
Yep.
Because I'm going to live with you the rest of my life.
And that's where the priority, like people are going, I want to do what's right. What's the priority order?
Yeah. And I think lots of people, there's this natural thing where you grow up in a family and there's this like belief system, like family above all else, blood before everything else, whatever it is. And you can feel a part of like a mafia, a team.
There are many mafias out there.
Yeah. You feel like this thing. And so then you meet somebody who has a different culture And you have numbers on your side. Like you're like, but we all feel this.
We have 12 children in our family, and this is what we think about life and how life should be done. And you're the idiot.
Yeah, totally.
You only have a couple people in your family, and clearly your family doesn't know anything.
And sometimes people kind of bully. It's not, they don't think they're bullying, but it's like, well, we have the dominant family culture. So now you just have to enter into that and you have to be like us.
Oh, yeah. Especially like I've seen spouses, they enter in, they show up at Christmas. The new wife shows up at Christmas, and everyone there expects the new wife to follow
like
all the
them.
rules of the family instead of going, this beautiful wonderful person has been introduced into our culture to show us something new about life.
Yes, to add to our culture.
To add to our culture.
Not that we need to make her our culture.
Right.
But that our culture can now be more full
blend and
because of who she is.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about practical ways of prioritizing your spouse.
Yeah.
Okay, so one is intimacy levels. The goal is that you have more intimacy with your spouse than everyone else around you. That would be the goal. Now, intimacy is different. I share different things with my girlfriends than I do with you, and I don't think that's bad.
Yeah.
You're thankful that I do that.
Yeah, there's certain things I don't care to know about that.
Totally.
Yeah. It's not like I don't value your life. I'm just like, yeah, you can go tell them about it.
Yeah, and vice versa. Like, go talk to your friends about your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle drama. You don't have drama about that. But, and I feel so cared by you and invested that it's okay for when you are like, I don't care about that. It doesn't feel painful or hurtful.
No, it's not dismissive.
Some of you out there get triggered by stuff like that when Justin says it, but there's no pain for me because he's so invested in my life that when he says, I don't have capacity for this, I'm like, that's okay, because you're invested in 90% of more than most humans.
And some of you out there don't have, when we talk about choosing each other and stuff, some of you don't have more than 5% involvement.
Yeah.
And actually getting invested and involved and knowing your spouse, and that needs to change. But go ahead.
Okay, so practically knowing your spouse and sharing with them. So intimacy level. Do you share with your spouse as much as you share with your friends, your boss, your parents, your family? Because you should be sharing, your spouse should be knowing you. They should know what you're feeling. They should know what's going on in your world. It should not be surprised. Now, sometimes you get surprised because I forget to tell you something, but it's not because I am just withholding it.
Well, let's back up. So when we talk about the information and the intimacy share, there's some of you out there that either you or your spouse runs to your in-laws first.
Right.
When it comes to a celebration.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, I got a new promotion. I called my dad. I called my mom. I called my brother, my sister, my cousin, whoever it happens to be. And you're not choosing your spouse first inside of that, of going like, hey, let's create celebration here.
Yeah.
And that creates intimacy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to share on this piece of information, or maybe it was devastating pain. And it doesn't mean you can never go share with your family. But when you have a system created where it's, they're my first.
They're the more important voice.
They're the important voice. And I'm going to go look to them first and foremost for feedback.
Right.
What do you think about what I'm doing over here, Dad? Mom, should I go and do this?
Right.
And it's like, why haven't you talked to your spouse about that yet?
Which is basically like, we're talking about respect. Having respect for your spouse as well as your family. So it's not, I respect my parents more than my spouse, so I listen to them more than I listen to my spouse. The whole concept is that I am invested and care about my partner. Yeah.
And some of you might be listening right now and go, I actually don't respect my spouse. I don't want their input first. There's a problem there. And that may be because their behavior might communicate that they're not.
Yeah.
It's not safe to respect their opinion because they freak out all the time. And that's a conversation in itself of like, I still keep going back to my family to have these conversations before you, because when I want to have these conversations, it turns into a huge fight, or you get really scared, or it could be some of that stuff. But you might be realizing, I don't go to them, and you need to start asking why.
Yeah. The second way to practically prioritize your spouse is time. Like you said, your dad would still drop everything. And I think it's beautiful that he had a value for family.
Oh, absolutely.
Actually, if it was just balanced with having as much value for you guys and then having value for them, it would have been a very beautiful, powerful trait.
Yeah. And I want to, this came through my mind, and I want to make sure we're clear on this. We're not talking about codependency with your spouse. So when we talk about making your spouse number one, we're not talking about like, oh, my wife wants me to do something for her. My husband wants me to do something for him.
I have to do everything for them.
I have to drop what I'm doing with my family over here, other people. That's not what it is. We're having a conversation about bringing you into balance.
Yeah.
And really being able to ask yourself what your value system is, what your priorities are. And if you're being driven by the need to keep this other person happy, then there's a big problem as to why you're involving them the way you are.
Yeah. So let's talk about kind of the gift of outside eyes. That's what I think happens in our relationships with our spouse and their family.
Yeah. What happens is initially when someone gets marries into a family, it's like both family systems feel oftentimes like a bomb just went off. Somebody just came into our space, has a different perspective, and is starting to share that with their spouse. So it's easy, like you come into my world. Let's back up into our story. Abby drops into my world, and we were visiting my parents.
Yeah. And you have a family system that's been normal for your whole life. Mm-hmm. And I come in and I think this is crazy.
You're a massive disruptor all of a sudden.
I'm a disruptor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what that can begin to do is that can start causing a lot of wedges. Like,
yes.
Why is this person trying to destroy this system that we've had working
so long? It's worked for so long.
They're looking on our insides and they don't like it.
Totally. And Pizzi felt that way with you. When I married you, she was like, whoa. Now you're changing a lot. What's happening? I don't know what I think about this.
And because we both became these disruptors as mirrors reflecting the reality of circumstances where it wasn't like we came in to try and control and change each other. It was just, for both of us, mind-boggling at how the system was set up the way it was.
Totally. And this is why marriage is such a gift, because you come into my family and we all get immune to our normal. Mm-hmm. It feels so normal. So we don't think there's a problem. This happens with all of my young married people that we work through stuff. I'm like, the best case scenario is what your spouse thinks about your family. Now, it can create a lot of wedges if you don't know how to work through it. But if you're looking at it like, this is going to give me some great insight into the dynamics that I am blind to. Like, Justin came in and it triggered me because he was like, this is crazy about your family and this is crazy. And I was like, no, you don't see, you don't know. Because all they see is the dysfunction.
And then your response would be like, no, you just came from a broken background.
Totally. It's a real mess. And then, I mean, and for you, I would say things and you'd be like, what? It would like blow your mind what I was saying. Like, this is not normal. And you're like, no, this has been my normal. Mm-hmm. But those were the only keys that we had to get out.
Yep. And so it's very easy, I think, for people to, one of the things I'm trying to figure out how to communicate this. I don't want to say that Abby was right 100% of the time. And I don't want to say that I was right 100% of the time in it. But what it became was an invitation to actually begin to question the history of where we came from and to begin to find out and begin to pick through, okay, what is healthy about what she is saying or I was saying inside of it. And again, there's never actual challenges to a culture like that, family cultures, until someone marries into it.
Yeah.
And it's actually a gift given to the entire family.
Absolutely.
To all of a sudden see themselves as they are reflected to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And it's an invitation into coming alive, healing, facing things. It's a really cool opportunity. But there's no one that's 100% right on either side.
Yeah, well, I would say like what we did is we both came to the middle. So like with your family, you have all these history. I see all this craziness, but there's also all this love that you've experienced from them.
Yeah.
And you see all of the good in them. And so 50-50 was like me bringing to the table what I wasn't sure of, and you bringing to the table and listening to what I wasn't sure of, and me listening and seeing the love. Now, also, it was easier with your family because they'd transformed so much from your childhood.
Yeah.
So I'm saying there were good things that were able to see. So it was like a 50-50. I never felt like I was against your family trying to convince you to be against them. No. I felt like I loved them and I was wanting to tell you things that were different than what I'd experienced growing up. And that's how it felt with me, I think.
One of the things that's going through my head, I'm thinking about the concept of shame.
Yeah.
And how that dismantles these conversations and keeps them from happening. And I'm also thinking about the approach that people may have. So I'm going to kind of talk about that because it just flashed through my head. So one of the things that happens oftentimes is when someone begins to talk about the family system, because of our loyalty buttons that are written inside of us, like we're told from a childhood that a good son or a good daughter is going to protect that family, is going to be in agreement with that family, isn't going to let anyone talk poorly of that family.
Well, not even just we're told that, because I was never told that as a kid, but we identify our identity connected to our parents.
Correct. And when I say told that, I mean through actions and circumstances and behaviors.
I don't think my parents did that as a behavior. I think that's also, I think that's true.
Correct. I think we're on the same page.
Okay.
I'm saying parents will react on behalf of their other family because of identity issues that you're talking about. And so the programming, you naturally watch that and you're like, yeah, I'm part of this family too. And so it's all inside of it. But what ends up happening is defensive walls come up when there's conversations that challenge things, because we begin to hear this system is being attacked and my identity is being attacked.
Totally.
And so not only is my identity being attacked, I'm being told that I'm bad because somehow I hear that you're telling me that my family's bad. So that must mean that I'm bad.
Yeah.
And also it's the potential for, I feel bad to my family. Like I'm betraying them behind me.
Oh, yeah, shame
and I'm being
everywhere.
a bad child if I don't stand up for them.
Yeah.
And so you have a handful of angles with shame. So
it's very triggering.
Part of the process is okay, if I don't have shame when my significant other comes to me and talks to me about my family, what wisdom is going to be available to actually liberate me and bring freedom to my whole family potentially?
Right.
But you have to be well aware of that going into this process.
Yeah. And this is the balance. This is such a hard conversation to have because we're talking a general conversation, and really you have to look at this from what angle are you coming from?
Totally.
So there's like all these wives out here that are horrible to their husband's spouses, and they feel justified by this.
Wives who are, wait, say that differently.
Like there's all these wives out there that are like, yeah, your family sucks, but they're not taking ownership for themselves. And then there's all these people who aren't actually having a voice. And so there's so many circumstances. We're trying to figure out how to find you where you're at.
Right. And let me add to that. This podcast episode shouldn't be an opportunity for you guys to go
take your bullets out and shoot each other.
See, I told you, listen to Just and Abi. No, the question is going to be,
they prove me right.
What are they telling me about me? Not what are they telling me about my spouse?
Yeah.
And proving that I'm right with my spouse. What are they telling me about me right now?
Yeah. So, for me, like I think about my parents, and what ended up happening was my dad we lived close to his family. And I don't think that I don't know that there was one family system is better or there was judgments, but my mom always felt like we didn't value her side of the family as much. We just didn't see them and go there as much. For us, I think it was money. Like we had to go somewhere to see them, where my dad's family lived there.
Yeah.
But it created a rift. And I know that my mom didn't feel protected by my dad in the family. Like my grandpa was a very harsh man. And, I know my dad was probably, I would bet my dad was scared of him. Like, I don't know that my dad stood up for her. He's a little bit more passive in general. So I think that dynamic plays into it. But one of the things that can happen is my mom never checked her triggers.
Right.
So she never looked at, okay, what is his family? So my mom eventually ended up just pulling the like, I'm sick. And she just slowly never went to a family function again.
Totally.
And we both knew, I mean, she would talk about how she really just didn't want to go. But part of it was, it wasn't a toxic family culture in that it wasn't abusive. it wasn't perfect, but it wasn't like she should have to do that. However, it makes sense because she had a lot of triggers from her childhood. Her dad left. She had a lot of pain with men. And then my dad had an anger edge and his dad had the same anger edge. So I can understand. But what happened is she never took the time to be like, okay, what is your family showing me about where needs healing for me?
Yep.
What is your family, like the dynamic? Okay, this culture feels unsafe. Why does it feel unsafe? What do I need to do to feel safe in this culture? So we're not saying that then my mom should have depended solely on my dad to make it safe for her around them. Because I think even if my dad would have set boundaries for her, she still would have, like, she had so much unsafety in general on the inside of her. Yep. And so it's partially like, yes, I want a partner who does this, but then I also need to check what's going on inside of me. There's this couple that I'm working with in counseling, and every time they go to the other person's family, they are aware of their own triggers from their family. So like, oh, the way that your family bows to your sister's dysfunction, that triggers me because that feels like the same way my family bows to my dad's dysfunction. Yeah. And so what happens is when they go to each other's family, it's like an invitation for them to see the pain that comes up and to work through something inside their soul about them, not about their spouse. And so let's say that Ben and Jennifer, they go to visit Jennifer's family, and Jennifer's sister runs the family. She's super dysfunctional and everybody pays attention to her and does whatever she wants. Well, that reminds Ben of his childhood and his dad being super dominant and running everything there. So if he's not being healthy, what he'll do is he'll demand that Jennifer fix the scenario in her family so that he can feel okay. Yep. Instead of like, well, yes, we do want to empower Jennifer to have a voice. Yeah. But also, Ben is like, I have to work through my issues with my dad being dominant and figuring out what I need to do to not feel like a victim in both of these circumstances. So that is where it gets healthy, the give and take. It's
the extreme ownership on each side where two people go, I'm going to own me and own how I am or am not showing up to this circumstance.
Yeah. So he does. He challenges Jennifer and she is like, oh my gosh, I literally didn't even notice that we all bow to her dysfunction. It's so normal. It's been for so many years. I just stick my head in the sand and pretend, la, 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 it's not happening. So when Ben brings it up, it's like great information from her and she's having to check like, yeah, why do I do this? And is this a healthy reaction from me? So he's not demanding she get rid of the pain. And she's not saying this is all your family trigger. It's both and.
Right. And I want to add to that because I said it earlier and didn't actually get around to it, which was the approach. Yeah. Which is the other side of the coin of what I was saying. Like, how are you approaching? And something that I know of that story is how each of them have had a really good approach. Mm-hmm. And I know that Ben's gone to her and said, hey, Jen, it feels did that feel a little crazy to you? Like, did you not feel any emotions? It kind of felt like your sister was running the show on that. Did you notice these couple things that happened? Like he didn't come in and go, listen, your sister's a bitch and I'm tired of this family system. If you're not, you better get up and start doing something about this. There was no aggression. There was no attack. And that's that for a lot of people when they feel, I want to back up, even with us. Yeah. In your codependency with your family, in regards to certain areas with your mom and stuff, I had a lot of fear that you were going to let her situation kind of rule the show. Yeah. And it would make sense that you'd have that fear, not only because I had deep codependency with my mom and she could run my life, but also because you grew up seeing that happen. Mm-hmm. And so you already have a history of like, oh no, I don't want to be stuck in this situation again. So two things happened simultaneously for me. I mean, directing kind of the story at us and our journey. Number one, I started getting into, can I be okay if she's not okay? Can I be okay if she continues to stay codependent with her mom and she's spun out by certain circumstances, her mom being sick and thinking she has to take care of her and what that's going to look like. And I had to start going, I'm not going to live in the future going down the road, wondering what that's going to look like first and foremost. The question is how am I going to manage myself along the way, even in the ways of going like, all right, so if Abby does do that, what kind of boundaries do I have the capacity to set?
Yes.
What kind of healthy conversations do I have the capacity to have? Can I be okay with her not being okay? Because a lot of it also was tied to the idea of in your codependency, if your mom was in a bad place, it could spin you out emotionally. Yeah. You could have bad days. And I was like, oh, can I be okay with her having a bad day and go be happy over her and let her be miserable as long as she wants to stay in that?
Right.
And at the same time, there was conversations where, me and a counselor are like, you're in denial about this. We need to talk about the reality of this situation. And
I wish I would have listened more to what you had said years before about my family. And I think that came from a little bit of arrogance.
I am not going to make light of what you just said by joking about I told you so's or being like, did you just say that? I'm going to soak that in. That was a very kind acknowledgement.
Yeah. Well, it's just true. I think I thought our family was healthier than your family. I knew mine was dysfunctional too, but there was some ways our dysfunctions were different. And I think this is really important.
Oh, that's a great point to talk about.
Most family systems are all dysfunctional, all of them.
Yep.
Some of them are healthier than others, that's for sure. Some of them are more toxic, but all of them have dysfunctions.
Their own thread of dysfunction in it.
But somehow most of us think that our dysfunction is less of a problem than somebody else's. And so there was definitely a thought of like, this really traumatized you and there's some real issues there and you don't like, but also I think part of my arrogance came from, I had been in counseling since I was 12. So I'd been working on issues with my parents for a really long time. So I thought, no, I think I've worked through it. I think I'm good.
Which you're talking to some people out there right now.
I am talking to some people.
They're like, no, I'm good. I worked through it. Maybe you're not.
There's always deeper levels. I feel like when I opened my eyes, it's the most liberating thing that has ever happened to me. When I opened my eyes to truly how dysfunctional my family was. I don't hate them. I actually love them more now than ever. I just understand why I do what I do and why they did what they did. And I have so much compassion on myself and them because all of us were just trying to protect ourselves. But I'm digressing. The point is that I wasn't able to hear your feedback about my family and your feedback about my family. Once I was able to hear it, changed my life.
Yep.
It empowered me. Once I got past the loyalty or the shame or the you don't know or you don't fully understand or all of those things. Once I could hear the heart of what you were saying, it was an invitation for me into wholeness.
Yeah.
And it was really good. Now, validate me in front of everybody that I didn't become super codependent and I have a healthy relationship with my parents right now. And your fears were wrong.
Yep. Thank you, Cheryl, for your help in that process.
Cheryl was our counselor at that point.
No, it's true. I have seen my fears be walked all over because you did actually show up. And it was one of the things that I had to sit down and kind of I don't know how to put it, almost ask for forgiveness inside of my being, where I'm like, I'm so sorry that I did that to her, or carry that fear, because the truth is that you had a history of overcoming things that were put in front of you. You may needed to be hit on the head multiple times with a mallet on something, but when you could see
He's talking like logically, not like actual
Yes, everyone knows
abuse.
Metaphorically.
Yes.
Yes, they get that.
People get triggered about all kinds of weird stuff on our show. So I was like, I should just let them know. We don't believe or endorse physical abuse.
No mallets on heads. But I had to accept that you've actually always taken up the challenge, and some people don't have that in their world, but that's something that you've been able to do. So you did an amazing job at it.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
thanks
you're
for
very
that
welcome.
Unsolicited compliment. Okay. I love what you were saying about your approach, though. And this is really, really true. You don't have power to change your spouse. You have power to have conversations and say like, hey, this really hurts me. You have power to say, I need to go to counseling because your relationship with your family's really creating a huge block for us. You have those powers, but you don't have the power to change your spouse.
No.
You do have the power to, how do I be healthy while you do it? So if I'm really triggered by how you relate to your parents, I get to triggered, meaning I have emotions coming up about it. I feel angry. I feel frustrated. I feel sad. I feel shut down.
Powerless,
I feel numb,
out of control.
Any of those. Then I get to go deal with what the root of those things are. And it's not you.
Right.
Like, here's the truth. If I have no underlying hooks for your family system, then I can just look at it and be like, wow, it's a real bummer that he wants to be in such a dysfunctional scenario.
Yeah, and you get the power to see your way out of those dysfunctional scenarios as often as you want as a capable human being.
Yeah. And so I think, but the goal would be like, if you want connection, to hear each other and find boundaries and begin to create a culture that embodies both cultures.
Yeah.
A culture that like where it's half you and it's half me, and we value both sides of our family.
That's great, because that was a transition I actually wanted to step into.
Oh, please do.
That conversation is, we're now going to mold together and co-create a culture that we want. A lot of people aren't deliberate about co-creating their marriage culture.
Yeah.
Usually, oftentimes, the most dominant culture,
dominant
person wins out. Like the one who's like would rather have more peace at all costs. They just kind of go, all right, well, this is how we're going to do Christmases and Thanksgivings. And I guess this is the way we communicate because that's how your family did it. And they bow to it rather than going, what are we creating? How do we want to relate? What are the rules by which we want to play by when it comes to family, connection, communication? How do we want to play moving forward in the way that we relate to our friends and everything else?
Yeah. And this is what we're talking about, is being intentional. Being intentional, and value for each other looks like, I value that even though you're different and I may not be able to see immediately. This is a problem in culture right now. Our differences aren't something we think is beautiful and makes us richer. It is something that separates and divides us. And we're wanting to bring back this, we're intentionally creating a culture where two people have cultures that both have beauty and gifts that add to it. So there's things like your family, the way it does Christmas is amazing and is so richly added to my culture. The way my family did comfort is amazing and is so richly added to your life. And the gift when we are with people is to learn how to see that what they have to contribute is valuable, even if some of it is dysfunctional. And to see that what we have to contribute is valuable, even if some of it's dysfunctional.
I'll add to that. I know that when you entered into my family, our family had a strong judgment on your approach to portions of life, where you're more of the lackadaisical, like go with the flow.
No. I'm not lackadaisical.
Well, maybe that's the wrong word. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm using that. You're more relax and go with the flow.
Absolutely.
I thought that's what lackadaisical meant.
Oh, maybe it does. It sounded more like lazy to me.
Maybe not. I don't know.
You're probably right.
But you're kind of just
going
with the
flow. Did you see that? I deferred to you. Did you like that?
And you're not really
Listen, I'm proactive and super strategic, but I'm much more relaxed about how things get done.
Right. And I don't know if your strategic part of you shined through in the beginning.
It did not in those areas.
No. And so I'm talking about, especially when you came into our culture, you were like, nah,
Oh, yeah, totally. You guys are like, it was like marrying into a military family where like things are on time chunks. Like you clean this fast and you clean where everything's sparkling and that like somebody could inspect it and nothing would be wrong. And then on time means 15 minutes early. And you guys are like, go, 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 go,
Totally.
do. And you guys had a core value for checking things off the to-do list much more than enjoying them. So like we could be on like a family day trip and it would be much more like, we got to get here by this time than like, we're together and this is fun.
And Abby on the other end, especially early on, was like, I don't care if anything gets accomplished.
Oh yeah. I'm like,
burn the day to the ground, which, so what we began to do is
listen, I had been chronically sick my whole life. I had to learn how to surrender the day.
Totally. So, but inside of that, one of the things that was beautiful is that in the journey of you being inside of our family, I've watched our family be like, it's not that high of stakes. We don't really need to get all this done right now. Let's just have fun, because you brought this fun element to it.
Yeah.
Now tell everyone what you got out of my family.
I was going to, actually. I didn't even need it because I was going to. Yeah. Your family's way more relaxed now.
Yeah.
I do think I added that. Like way more, like we're more present with each other.
Totally.
We have fun. We hang out. But I learned the value of how when you get things done and you make sure you get them done, you can also have more fun together.
Yeah.
And that I learned how a clean environment, like all the things, how cleanliness actually creates space to enjoy life more. So I actually learned that all of my core values, which were to enjoy people and what's currently happening, were aided by the process of getting the tasks. And so I could see like the discipline created more space to enjoy freedom, and the freedom created more space for you guys to not just do.
And so there's part of that again, where you guys are going to be asking the question when you get off here, what is it that the person is bringing that could bring balance to my life? One of my therapist always talks about every human being a teacher.
Yeah, it's good.
Every human being that we interact with, that we have a relationship with, is our teacher. And that teachers come and go, and they're for seasons. And sometimes those teachers were, a spouse that we ended in a divorce with, and things didn't work out, but that relationship was meant to be a teacher. And we're having to reflect and go, what is this person teaching me? And that's a stance of humility. That's a posture of humility.
Yes.
And oftentimes people don't want to take that stance. They want to get in wars. They want to be proven right, rather than what is this teaching?
Yeah. And I want to make sure nobody has shames. When I was talking about like, you should prioritize your spouse, what I'm actually trying to do is not shame people. Shoulds are very shamey. What I was trying to say is this is what a healthy normal could look like. Because lots of people haven't ever heard or seen a healthy normal. So they've never seen a spouse prioritize the other spouse. And if you're in a marriage, you can't control the other person if they will prioritize you or not. But something you can do is you can go with humility and share hurt feelings, not accusing, blaming. You don't prioritize me, and that's why da 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 da. It has to be like, hey, I'm realizing that I feel like maybe we're not each other's number one priority, or maybe we are on the intentional, but like on the inside, but our behavior isn't communicating that. I would love to have more intimacy with you. Would you be open to having a conversation about how we prioritize each other so that we can get on the same, I'd love to be on the same page as you. With spouses, one thing is there feedback that your spouse has been giving you about your family system that you have been trying, that you've been ignoring, or that you haven't been listening to, or that you've been negating? I just want you to take time and actually give yourself permission to process, like, could they be true? And could that be an invitation for me? Yeah.
Now I want to add this.
That was homework. Did you know that? I was giving homework.
Oh, that's great homework.
Okay, great.
That's homework, everybody. Do the homework. As we step into this dialogue about in-laws, and I don't know if we'll do some more episodes on it, but there's an element of confrontation that now gets pulled into the picture.
Oh,
and
get it, you sexy beast of a man. Do you know what is so sexy?
A bald head.
I didn't know where you were going when you said ball. I was like, where's he going? I thought you were going to say balls. I was like, what a weird thing. No, what is so sexy is that you're not afraid of confrontation.
No.
You are not passive. And I want to say I have so much compassion. Listen, if you're out there and you're codependent with your family and you're terrified of confronting them, or you're terrified of setting boundaries on behalf of your spouse, I have so much compassion. Me and Justin both grew up with codependency. We know it's a strong pull. And it can actually feel like, I remember it didn't even feel like an option to set boundaries with my mom at a certain point. I was like, that's not a real option. Like, I couldn't even see how that it could be an option. So if you have codependency, have so much compassion on yourself and spend some time working through why you're so terrified of losing your parents' approval, or of having less connection, or of standing up, like whatever the fear is that is stopping you from confronting. That is a great thing to run after. You
just hijacked what I was saying.
I know. I'm so sorry, but I got so excited because you do this so well. And I wish that I'm
hijacking the mic back. Be quiet. So here's the thing on confrontation. We're not going to have the capacity to break down what healthy confrontation looks like here in this space. We've done a lot of it in past stuff. But it is going to create that invitation for confrontation in order to begin to readjust the relationships that happen. I know that recently I've talked to a couple of people who are in their late 40s, early 50s, and they've never once confronted their parents. They've never once confronted their siblings on anything, not their history, not their current experiences. And if they haven't, it's because of things that Abby named off. There are places that you are terrified of what that could happen, what that means about you. And so I'm going to give you this piece of homework rather than being like, go confront and start a fire in your family.
Right.
I want you to just start with, okay, I do feel emotions about confrontation. What are those? And I want you to just write out, like, what are my emotions about confronting these key individuals inside of my family if I haven't done it, or I rarely do it? And when I rarely do it, what are the emotions that come up for me? Because it's about beginning to become self-aware so that you can get some healing for the things that are keeping you from being a powerful person who sets healthy boundaries and communicates well. So that's gonna be my injection of homework for this process.
Yeah, and we see, so many people are like, well, what will it do now for me to confront about this thing? But it empowers people. People get to feel free and loved by themselves on a new level, and there's so much breakthrough that happens.
It bleeds over, and that is a great common question. What does it matter if I confront or face this stuff head on? What if they just get more angry and it makes a bigger mess?
Or like, it happened 20 years ago. Why am I having a voice about it?
And when we talk about the word power, it means I'm getting rid of fear inside of my soul. I'm not feeling small and insignificant inside of my life anymore. I'm not letting outside circumstances demand and determine who I will be and how I will respond to the world around me. And what it begins to do is it builds the confidence. Like, a life fully lived, an abundant life fully lived, is one where we're living out of our authentic identity and the confidence that is built as we face these challenges that feel really scary. And what it really is it's an invitation into adulthood. It's an invitation to true manhood or womanhood as you begin to do these things. And I know I'll say this, confrontation, especially when it came to my family, was the on-ramp to my manhood. Yeah. Like, I felt like a little boy, and there are so many of you that feel like little kids, and that will never get resolved in your life until you confront authority in your world. And your parents may have passed away and they may be gone, but there may be authority that represents that you have never had those challenging conversations with. And so I could feel it in that stage when I started the confrontation with my parents. I was like, I feel like a grown-ass man now. I feel like I can go take on all these things. And what it did is it allowed me to get inspired and to go out and create dreams that were inside of my heart that I was terrified to do because I felt so small inside of me.
That's so good. The last piece of homework that I just wanted to end on is, if you're listening and you recognize I am more connected to my sister, brothers, mom, dad than my spouse, And I've dealt with this. I deal with this on a regular basis. One of my clients now, I'm like saying, you've got to like, you spend all of your energy dealing with your drama. It's not even that she's so close with her mom. It's just lots of drama. But I'm like, you spend 10 energy dollars dealing with your mom and 1 energy dollar dealing with your husband, because your mom is lots of drama. But like, if you spent 10 energy dollars dealing with your husband, your marriage would be awesome. And then your mom's drama would cost less, you know? And so if you're listening and you're recognizing like, oh, I have the wrong person in the prayer in the wrong spot, or I've been giving all my time and energy or all whatever. I just want you to, I think repenting is really good. Like going to a person and saying, I'm recognizing this. I don't know how to change it. So don't expect that all of a sudden it's going to all be different, but I want to learn to grow. I want you to have a voice about it, to be able to help and validate. Like if you're listening to this and you've been married for years and you never stood up for your wife or for your husband, you know, inside of your family being bullied or whatever, or you never said like, hey, the way they think, because one of the things, hey, the way they think about this matters, even though it's different than us. If you're in that spot, you can just go validate your spouse. I'm really sorry. I bet it felt horrible. Like I wasn't choosing you. Like I chose someone over you. I didn't know better. This is one of the things I love. I didn't know better, but now that I know better, I'm going to learn how to do better.
Yeah.
And you don't need to hate yourself or beat yourself up for it. We want you to walk away from this with personal ownership.
Yep.
Just like, what is it that I can do? And maybe it's my spouse. Maybe it's my spouse never stood up to me with his family. So what can I do? What can I do to be powerful? I can process my pain with it and I can forgive.
Yeah. And also, I can go stand up to that family.
Yeah.
As a side note.
Yeah, I don't have to wait for my spouse to.
And I don't know if we waited too long to have that conversation, but that's a really big deal. There are some of you that have been waiting for your spouse to take a stand and feeling powerless to their family.
Yeah.
Where you need to go, no, I'm going to go sit down and have individual conversations with your parents, your brothers and sisters, if I have to, about the way that these things are relating. If you're not, I'm not going to just sit back and feel angry and bitter and resentful at you for it.
And I think, because here's the truth, you would make me do that. Even though you stand up to me, you've stood up for me, but you're not doing it in a way that you want me to be empowered.
Yeah, absolutely. And so many times I've been like, well, you need to go talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually sometimes think that you should have to confront their family anyway.
Yeah.
Even if you have a spouse
that strong value for that,
is protective of you. Like Ben and Jen, the couple we talked about earlier, all the time I'm like, yeah, Ben, confront Jen's family. Sure.
Yeah,
do it. I think you
them.
should. Because why? Because I think it'd be good for him to learn confrontation. It's not even, I'm like, this is empowering for you to set good boundaries.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's her job, because it's her family, to confront them. I think it's his job to be healthy for him.
Right.
And so he needs to deal with his triggers from his family, but then he also needs to confront and be healthy. What do I need to have healthy boundaries with you? So you're never really powerless, because I know so many people, when you have victim mentality, you listen to a podcast like this and you're like, well, my spouse never did ... So I'm just screwed. No, sometimes I think when your spouse doesn't behave the way that you want, it actually is an invitation for you to get the healing you really need.
Yeah.
It's a demand. Oh, I have to grow in this area. And that's really beautiful and powerful.
So good.
The last thing I want to say is some of you need to forgive your family or your spouse's family.
Yeah.
And we didn't go into that, but that's such a huge part of being powerful, is forgiving them. And
there may be wars that you've created with your in-laws on your end, because the way you showed up at the table, they tried their best to love or do whatever, and you came in with all of your own stuff, and you need to actually go sit down and be like, hey, I brought some crazy things to the table in the way that I've responded to this family, and I haven't been open to be received or whatever. I haven't had an open mind to your guys' culture, and just came in and was moody and distant and offstandish. And that's a whole other side of the coin that could have been talked about. But I think that that's huge. I like that, Abby.
Yeah. We actually had a client who the in-laws really rejected her, but when she was working through owning her stuff, she was like, No, I showed up cold. I showed up distant. I didn't show interest. I wasn't warm. And so they never changed. They never apologized for not embracing her, but she went and apologized for how she showed up, because that's all we have power over is us.
Yep. All right. So like we always say, if you got anything out of this, rate, review, subscribe, and share on social media. Tag us on Instagram at Justin Stumval, at Abby Stumval. We love hearing your stories of how you're being touched. And also, iTunes is an awesome way if you write a review on there and give it a rating. It just builds more platform. We want to get the message of healing out there. Share about this specific episode with all of your friends and family. If you feel
Send it to your in-laws and either tell them you're the best or tell them we need to talk.
Share it with the world. All right. We love you all. Peace out.